Good evening, everyone. If you could come in and take a seat. Welcome. It's a real privilege to gather here at New Life Chapel in Wodonga for tonight's Federal Candidate Forum for the Indi electorate. My name is Chad, and at the other end here we've got Nathan, and we're going to facilitate your evening. So we're honoured to host this important event here in Wodonga, where members of the Christian community have the opportunity to hear directly from some of those putting themselves forward to represent us in federal parliament. This forum is a chance for open dialogue, respectful discussion, and the opportunity for you to ask questions and for our concerns to be heard. It's a space where we can explore the values and the priorities of each candidate and gain a clearer understanding of how they plan to serve the people of Indi if elected. We just want to thank and acknowledge Freedom for Faith, who have given us a lot of resources to put this night together, as well as New Life Chapel for hosting the event tonight. And this is actually just one of 46 church forums that is getting held across the nation in the lead up to the election. We're so grateful for the candidates who have joined us tonight. So we have former nurse and midwife, Dr. Helen Haynes, who has served our electorate as an independent for the last 2 terms of government and is our current Member of Parliament. We have Mr. Michael White, a local father and husband, standing as the Family First candidate for Indi. Mr. Mark McFarlane, a local businessman, standing as an independent candidate for Indi. Former councillor and a member of the Victorian Upper House between 2018 and 2022, Mr. Tim Quilty, standing as the Libertarian candidate for Indi. And former local mayor and small businessman, Mr. James Trenery, the Liberal candidate for Indi. So we honour your willingness to serve and your contributions to the community. And we also want to thank each one of you for taking the time to engage thoughtfully in this process. It's our hope that after the evening, you'll have an even greater understanding and therefore have a greater ability and willingness to represent the needs of Christians in your electorate during the next term of government. So we look forward to a respectful and enlightening discussion tonight. I'd like to introduce Senior Pastor of New Life Chapel, Pastor Zoran Ponovic, to say a few words and open the evening in prayer.
Thank you, Chad and Nathan. And there's a number of people that have made this happen here this evening. I wonder just first up if we can just show our appreciation to all of the crew who have put this on together at the back, and ladies as well. I really appreciate it. Well, tonight marks a significant moment, not only for the churches in our region, but for our wider community and nation. And many of us here, as followers of Jesus Christ, we believe that faith does not sit on the sidelines when it comes to matters that impact people's lives. On the contrary, our faith calls us to engage with love, wisdom, deep commitment, and well-being for others. The Bible does remind us in Romans 13 that all authority is established by God, and that those in leadership are called to be servants for the good of the people. And so leadership is not about status or power. We are reminded that it is about stewardship, responsibility, and a heart to serve. So tonight, as we welcome our federal candidates of Indi, we do so with deep respect and honour, and we thank each of you for your willingness to serve, to lead, and to be with us this evening. So let's put it on. As a church, we are committed to Christian values, justice, compassion, integrity, and care for the vulnerable. We also deeply value religious freedom and freedom of speech. These are not just ideals, these are convictions that shape how we live and how we vote. Our hope tonight is that through questions and honest dialogue, we as a community can discern which of the leaders best reflect these values. We also believe in the power of community, The church is called to be a light in the world, and not only within the four walls of the building, but in every sphere of society, including government. Our heart is to see the community flourish and to be a voice for those who may not always be heard. So again, to each of our candidates, welcome. We honour you for your service and willingness to be here tonight. And may this forum be marked by respect, insight, and shared desire for a better future for all Australians. Can we bow our heads in a spirit of unity and prayer as we open the meeting? Heavenly Father, we gather before you today as a community united not by political party, but by our shared hope for a just, compassionate and flourishing society. We thank you for the freedom we have to meet openly, to ask questions and to seek truth in the spirit of peace. May this meeting be marked by grace in our words, respect in our dialogue and clarity in our understanding. May your Spirit guide every question asked and every answer given. And above all, we pray that your will be done in our great nation as it is in heaven. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Thank you, Chad.
Thank you, Pastor Zoran. Well, welcome everyone, and a special welcome to all of our candidates. Thank you for taking your time out to be with us this evening. Shortly, you're going to hear from our candidates, and they're going to give a 5-minute introduction to who they are and what they stand for. But before we do that, just a bit of housekeeping. For those of you who don't know, toilets at the rear of the building. And then from a procedure point of view, we're going to have Slido available for questions. So if you haven't already, you can scan that QR code, which will take you into a place where you can submit questions. If anyone needs any help with that, we have some people around the room who can help you with that. And if that fails you, we have a reliable method of pen and paper that you can use at the back table. So please don't hesitate to get involved this evening. So we do have, sorry about that. We do have some questions that have been pre-prepared by Freedom for Faith. And these have been developed by senior leaders of a number of major denominations, and they reflect issues of concern to a large number of Christians across the country. So they're a good basis for where we're going to start the evening, but we'd like you to get involved and build on those themes and add things that you think might be relevant here this evening that you want to hear about. So really encourage you to get involved. In Slido, you can also look at other questions people have raised and give it a thumbs up, which will lift it to the top. Ideally, we're going to have a lot of questions, and if that's the case, we won't get through them all tonight because we do want each of the candidates to have some time to be able to answer questions. We're going to have a timer up the back, and our media team will be helping us with time management. We'll obviously, that'll be available for you guys to see, but Chad and I will give you a gentle prompt if you're getting close to that or going over. But we really just want this to be a good chance to discuss issues that are close to people's heart. All right, so with that in mind, we're going to start off with some 5-minute introductions from our candidates. And to kick things off this evening, I would like to welcome Independent and current member for Indi, Dr. Helen Haynes.
Well, thank you very much, Nathan and Chad. Can you all hear me okay? Such an impressive sound deck back there. I inspected it before. Thank you, Pastor Zoran, for that beautiful prayer and opening remarks, and for reminding us of the values that underpin who this congregation are and underpin the values to which we come to meet tonight. Thank you to Kate for the warmest welcome I've received at a candidate forum, I think, absolutely ever. Thank you. And to all the organising team. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming out. I also just wish to acknowledge the recent passing of Pope Francis, Holy Father, over the Easter period, and acknowledge that many people of the Catholic faith tradition are mourning his death. And I had a few words with the Bishop of Sandhurst just yesterday to talk about the contribution of Pope Francis. So, yes, I'm Helen Haynes, and I'm your current federal independent member of Parliament, and it's been an enormous privilege to serve you in the federal Parliament and here every day in the communities right across Indi, from Kinglake to Corryong, all 29,000 square kilometres of beautiful, beautiful Indi. The Northeast has been my home for almost 40 years. I live on a small farm on the King River in Wangaratta with my husband Phil, and we raised our 3 children there. They all went to school there. I plan to grow older there. I love this community, I truly do. Through my work as a nurse and a midwife, and then later on as a health researcher, I've cared for people in our community through some of the best of times and indeed through some of the hardest of times. And such a privilege indeed to be a midwife and be there when people take their first breath. And such a privilege to be a nurse when people take their last breath. It's those life experiences that guide me as a federal member of Parliament in every decision I make. When I meet people out in the community, it guides me with compassion and integrity in how I interact with each and every person that I love to interact with. As a member of Parliament, I truly understand that life is short. Life is short, life is precious, and you need to make every minute count. My whole life has been in the service of others, and I see that as my role as a Member of Parliament. As an independent, I'm proud that I fight for you, not for party bosses. I don't take my instructions from a party boss in Brisbane or Canberra or Sydney or wherever they might be. In my first term, I heard loud and clear from the voters of Indi that they had lost trust in many aspects of our federal parliament, and that they wanted to restore integrity to our democratic institutions. And I fought tooth and nail to establish Australia's first National Anti-Corruption Commission. I was very proud to write the initial piece of legislation for that, and very proud in my second term of Parliament to legislate for a National Anti-Corruption Commission. And I'm, of course, very proud to be Deputy Chair of the Oversight Commission. I think it's very, very important that we have integrity, honesty, trust and decency in our federal parliament. In the COVID pandemic, I was proud to shepherd you as best I could through what were terribly difficult times in a border community, and preceding that through the worst bushfires we'd experienced, and many people needed assistance from my office, and I have a fantastic team who helped so many of you. I've fought for our fair share of regional housing, because I know that across our community, housing is a human right. And so many people are struggling to find safe and affordable housing, whether that be for somewhere to rent or somewhere to buy. The cost of living right now is a huge problem for so many people, and I was not surprised but delighted to hear of the work that this church does in collaboration with Food Share to assist people, many people who've never needed assistance with putting food on the table before. I've listened to our communities across many issues. One of them is in regard to the shift to renewable energy. That's a big part of an emerging Australia as we face the inevitabilities of a changing climate and seek to have a just and fair transition to removing as much carbon as we can from our environment and making sure that our world, our globe, our Australia is there for our children and grandchildren to enjoy. I've been fighting for better aged care, for better education and health services. I was very proud to work with the Health Minister and assist the people of Yakandanta when Yakandanta Health was facing significant funding problems and at risk of closure. We were able to get $3 million to keep the doors open there. I've been fighting hard for mental health, and I'm very proud to bring forward $2.5 million to assist Gateway Health in opening doors to accessible mental health services. Not enough, we need more. It's critical that we do everything we can to support not only the physical health of our community, but their mental and spiritual health. Eating disorders. I've spoken at length about the need to have greater support, particularly for young people. Telecommunications. Telecommunications is a human right. We can't undertake education, business, emergency calls, healthcare unless we have strong and stable telecommunications. And I've been very proud that Indi is the most successful federal electorate in Victoria for receiving funding for our mobile phone towers. There's so much more work to do. I'm here to listen to you tonight. I look forward to our conversation. I'm very pleased to be here amongst faith communities and to hear of your concerns and to answer what questions that you have for me in my most honest way. I don't have all the answers, but I'm certainly very, very good at listening, and I try to take your voice with me when I go to Canberra.
Thank you, Dr. Helen. All right, I'd like to invite Member for Family First, Mr. Michael White, to the lectern. Thank you. Candidate.
Trust that's on, yes. Yes, so as was mentioned there, I'm Michael White, the candidate for Family First. You referred to me as the member, which is confident, but I live up in Beechworth. I've lived up there for 8 years. And we moved down from Sydney, and that's just because we wanted to get out of the city and get to a beautiful part of the world, which this certainly is. So we're enjoying ourselves up there immensely. We're building our own stone house, which started a few years after we arrived, and we're very close to finished on that. And we adopted 2 children as well in that time. So yes, we've been rather busy the last 8 years, and then I decided to run for Parliament as well. So, yes, so why am I here in Family First? Like, that sort of almost happened by accident. A couple of years ago, my wife said, Family First is reforming and they're looking for candidates. Now, why don't you apply? And I said, oh, I don't want to join a political party. Do I have to do that? And she sort of nudged me out the door virtually, and I went down to Melbourne for an interview. And now there's Lyle Shelton and a few other big wigs of the party, and they're talking to me. And that seemed to go okay, but then I came back and thought, surely they're not going to want me. Like, how could they want me? But then I got a call from Lyle, and he says, Michael, we really liked you. We want you to be our candidate for Northern Victoria at the election. And I thought, oh, wow. And I sort of realised that could mean I could get elected to the Victorian Parliament, which so it sort of like got into politics out of nowhere, yet was suddenly in a position where I could actually possibly get elected. So that was certainly an exciting experience. So it turned out I didn't get elected, but we weren't that far off. But this time I'm just running in the lower house where there's no chance of getting elected. We have to be honest about that. But I'm really enjoying just the process of meeting new volunteers and sort of building up this party, which, I mean, I'm in this party because I'm a Christian myself. I usually go to St Patrick's in Albury for Mass most Sundays. And I've become concerned about our religious freedom rights and just the general functioning of our democracy, like freedom of speech and those sort of things. Over about the past decade, I think have been going a bit backwards, and we do need a party which is going to stand up for all those things. And that's why I'm in Family First. I would say Family First is a very genuinely conservative party in the sense, I think it understands what conservatism actually is. Like, if you think about it for a moment, what does conservative actually mean? It means to conserve, simple as that. So conserve what exactly? I would give a simple answer of all that is true, good and beautiful. Now, it's hard to work out everything that's going to fit into those categories straight away, but there's a couple of things which do stand out to me, and I think top of the list almost is our Christian heritage. Like, that's something which has been handed down to us by our civilization, which I think you would not want to discard. Like, it's something well worth keeping. So I think it's sort of indisputable that that's in the true, good and beautiful category. And the sort of the morals that come with that, the sanctity of life, believing in the truth of male and female, those sort of things, all come from that sort of Christian tradition. And obviously all those things are under attack at the moment in our society. But I think we've got to stick to our guns with that sort of thing, and I think we need this part, and this is why this party, nature abhors a vacuum. Like, there wasn't really a party distinctly standing up for those things. Like, there's some good candidates in other parties. I've met a few out on the hustings, but I don't think there really is a party there which is distinctly standing for all those things. So I think Family First needs to fill that void. And when you're voting, it's sort of like a matter of, sure, if you vote for other parties, you can still care about those things, but the problem is you're not really sending a signal that you do care about those things. Like, voting for us sends a clear signal that you care about the value of Christianity in our society and its teachings. And so I think also it's not just about our individual rights. What I'm concerned about is we don't want to get a society where Christians feel like they don't want to fully participate in society. Because often we're the cream of the crop. Like, we're overrepresented in a lot of good things in our society because we're motivated people. We want to go out and do good to our neighbour. That's our commandment. But I see a few areas where there could be a problem. Like, for instance, a nurse who doesn't want to be involved with abortions might end up feeling like she doesn't want to be a nurse because might get forced to do that. And so I think we've got to be very careful in our society to preserve freedom of conscience around these things when we're in what I would call a post-Christian society now. And so we've got to make sure we preserve those rights of conscience, if you like, to still be able to participate fully in society, because it's not just about the individual right, it's about our society actually functioning. We never have an excess of talent. We can't afford to deter people who would be good in a job from applying because they're Christian. And the same thing, like for instance, we adopted some children, and when I went to the final interview of that, they approved us and all, but then the lady out the front said, "I'm not sure how you're going to cope with some teenage problems with your Catholicism." And I was thinking, I was kind of seeing my Catholicism as an advantage rather than a problem in this situation. But I can see there's that sort of attitude in some of our bureaucracies. And the last thing we would want happening is for some law to come in which says, sending children to Christian parents isn't appropriate anymore in our society. Then you're going to suddenly lose a lot of the people who want to adopt the children. So again, it's not just about those individual rights, it's about our society really working by utilising everyone's talents, that we just can't reject Christianity from society. And I guess that in a nutshell is why I'm here. I'm sort of standing for our rights as Christians, standing for the value of Christianity in society. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Very good. All right, next up, I'd like to welcome independent candidate Mark McCormick. Farland. Sorry, Mark.
That's fine. Yeah, Mark McFarlane. That's correct. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How are we tonight? It's such a pleasure to speak to you tonight. Nearly wasn't included, but they squeezed me in, and I'm so glad. I'm so glad. As you can probably tell by my boots, I'm a carpenter. Got the blunnies on, like my Lord and Saviour Jesus Christ was, and my grandfather. I just got to check and not miss anything I want to say to you today. I grew up in the eastern suburbs of Melbourne. Housing Commission, like Albo, And but it's true, I was there with my mum and dad. Dad unfortunately left when I was 7, and stepfather stepped in when I was 8. You know the best part of that? He was a Christian. And you know what the first thing he did for me? He bought me a Bible for my birthday. And the moment I opened that Bible, I felt God speak to me and say, "This is the truth, Mark." Because I was a lost boy. I had no real dad. So I'm a Christian. And Jesus Christ is my Lord and Saviour. I want you to know that. So, the first thing that my late father, Robert McFarlane, did was give me that Bible, and it was very important. I do believe in the power of Jesus Christ, and I am a daily prayer because I need him, and I'm sure you feel that way too. I did run for the CDP back in 2011 when I lived on the northern beaches of Sydney for the Right Reverend Fred Nile, and he was a mover and shaker, amazing man. It was an honour to actually do that on the northern beaches of Sydney. And this is the first time since that I've tried running, since I moved to Glenrowan around 12, 13 years ago. I believe not in the climate politics and Climate 200. I believe it's just a redistribution of wealth to others while we slowly get pulled back and our industry suffers and our lives suffers and our power bills go up through the roof. Most of this that happens in Australia today, I believe, is through the lack of respect for Christianity, which built this country, without a doubt. And we are losing it. You just have to watch Australian television today, where the Lord's name is cussed so often, and it's fine. You watch Australian movies, I've got to turn it off. I don't know about you. I can't stand it, and I think it's a total disrespect for our faith, and I think we should do better than that. Also, there is a lack of respect, I believe, for the Jewish state of Israel. I believe there's a two-tier policing system here that's happening, where the Palestinians can do what they want on our streets, take over the Parliament House steps in Melbourne, but the few Jewish people that try and stand up for the state of Israel, the only democratic place in the Middle East, are lambasted by the police, very unfairly, and not given their free right to speech. I'm standing on 3 freedoms: freedom to choose, freedom to speak, and freedom to live. I don't know about you, but I struggled with COVID. Did anyone struggle with COVID? It was hard. And I'll tell you right now, a lot of it was unlawful, what was done to us. We were unconstitutionally treated really badly. We have a right to choose our own. This is where the choice is for me. Choose what we do to our bodies. This is the temple of Christ. It's not the temple of the government. A lot of people have been hurt, and I'm here to fight for justice in that area of the over-mandating and the power play that goes on within government. Freedom to speak. They always run laws through Parliament. This is hate speech law, but you know what? As Christians, we believe a lot of it's pointed at us. It's like hateful to speak what's in the Word of God. We need to get back to a place where it's respected more, I believe, for Christians to be able to speak out their faith, have their Christian schools, employ Christian people, and not be forced to be indoctrinated by an education system that I believe, a public one in particular, has lost its way for our children and for our future. And the freedom to live out our faith is very important to me, very important. The Lord said we would be persecuted, and I know each one of us, including me, have felt that lately, very much. And I think it's very important that we continue to speak freely as Christians in our country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. All right. We'd like to welcome Mr. Tim Quilty, a candidate for the Libertarian Party.
Hi. So yes, I'm Tim Quilty, local accountant, tax accountant. I was a former councillor for Wodonga, and I was also a former member of the state parliament for 4 years during COVID. We also had a good team that worked very hard helping people, didn't we, James? Yes. James worked for me. And I have a track record of standing up for what is right, for standing up for people's rights. A number of times in the parliament, I was the only person voting against something that I didn't believe in. Everyone else piled on board to push through things that were not right. I stood up for the unvaccinated who were being persecuted in actually quite an appalling fashion. And I'll continue to stand up for people's rights. So I grew up on a farm, country values, not inner city values. I was raised Catholic, but although I've now converted to Orthodox when I married my wife. I believe in the rights of the individual to choose. Why am I running? I'm running for a future for my children. I think pretty much all of us know something's gone wrong in Australian society in our direction. Things are running out of control. This is not the Australia that I grew up in, and it's going to be worse for my children. The Libertarian Party is the only one with a plan to fix things. Everyone else just wants to do more of what they're doing now, more of the things that are causing the problems. More taxes, more spending, bigger government, more laws taking away people's rights to choose for themselves. Bigger government equals more intrusion into our lives. Government crowds out the private sector. When I talk about the private sector, it doesn't mean businesses, it means human interaction. That's what the economy is. It's people interacting with other people. It's private charity, it's people who care to help people. All that gets squashed out by the government as the government grows bigger and bigger. So we need to break the chains of big government and set people free. I'm not going to stand up here and promise loads of spending. There is no magic money tree. Every dollar that gets spent has to be taxed from somebody or printed, which causes inflation. That's not sustainable. And you should, when you hear these people promising how they're going to spend, ask where's the money coming from. It's not going to come from taxing big companies is going to come out of your pockets because you're the easy marks. The Libertarian Party has a slogan this election, which is prosperity, family, and freedom. Now, for the Libertarian Party, every vote in Parliament is a conscience vote. We have a party policy, we have a line, and we believe it because our policy is all based around people's freedom. But every vote we vote on is for conscience vote. No one tells us what to do. So we want to set you free economically. Free to live our lives by our own values and to choose how we want to live. We want to set you free economically, we want to set you free socially. We want to defend your rights to freedom of speech and freedom of association, because without freedom of speech and freedom of association, we have no democracy. Increasingly, we have these governments bring in laws, hate laws or whatever else, to restrict what we can say, disinformation laws. It's just destroying our society. Our democracy. We can't have a democracy if we cannot speak freely. We want to defend women's spaces and women's sports. And we oppose invasive medical trans procedures on children. I'm not anti-trans, and if adults want to choose that, that's like their choice, but children cannot consent. So we'll push for a Bill of Rights, freedom of speech, freedom of association, freedom of religion. And I'll just take my last moment to plug my own pet hobby horse, which is creating a new state from the regional Victoria and regional New South Wales, breaking free from Sydney and Melbourne and Canberra, having a state that's run by the people who live in it, for the people who live in it, where we can protect our own values and our own interests.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, to round us out, Mr. James Trennery, candidate for the Liberal Party.
Thank you. Just a bit of my background for those that don't know me. I've been in small business most of my life, and Tim just reminded me I did work for Tim. Before I go any further, before I made the decision to run for politics, I wanted to make sure I could actually do something, achieve something. So I went and worked for Tim, which was a fantastic time, and also worked for One Nation for a period of time as well, just to see in the Victorian Parliament, just to make sure I could actually achieve something. So thank you for reminding me of that, Tim. Great boss, great boss. So yeah, small business most of my life. Married to my lovely wife, Amanda, just there, who's put up with a lot over the last couple of months. So 2 kids. So Amanda and I have been together since I was 21, so you were much younger than that. So yeah, 2 kids who are older kids now, moved on, grandson, so very happy about that as well. So we've got a small farm, 100 acres. I don't call myself a real farmer. I did get in trouble with that. I was in a room about this size, or about many people, and I said, I'm not a real farmer, I've only got 100 acres. Most of them had 70 or 80 acres and let me know that they were real farmers. So I'm not a real farmer, they might have been. So Victorian Chamber of Commerce, I work for the Victorian Chamber of Commerce. This is my passion. Small business is one of my passions, and getting small business up and going. But through COVID, I worked with Victorian Chamber of Commerce trying to help small businesses keep going. And it was just horrific. They were made to be policemen, kicking people out. And it was just absolutely horrific, especially in Victoria, that's where I was based. The rules and regulations that were put on them really damaged their business and put a lot of mental stress on their staff and on themselves, and it really hasn't been addressed since. So hopefully we learn that lesson and don't go any further down that track. I was on local government for 8 years out at Indigo Shire. People think it's a real lefty place. Probably is. I was the only Liberal there, so might have been. And I was mayor, and it was absolutely fantastic. And it was part of the drive to do what I do, to actually work hard to achieve something. 2 things that I promised I'd do when I first got on was a rail trail from Beechworth to Yackandandah, because it was so important to our town, and also keeping the council embedded in Yackandandah. And I achieved both those in that 8 years that I was on there, so I was very proud of that. What do I believe in? What am I fighting for? What am I here for? I was door knocking from about August last year onwards. Same things came up. Cost of living. Cost of living is hurting so many people. There's single income families that when they get their electricity bill have to make decisions on what food they buy. You know, that's now today in Wodonga. It's now today in Wangaratta and Benalla. It's all over the electorate. And that's not right. You know, we shouldn't be in that position. But the cost of living is doing that. As I said, small business, I'm a big proponent of small business. They employ our kids, they sponsor our cricket sides, our footy sides, all our sporting sides. They are an absolute necessary part of our community, especially in smaller towns, and we must look after them far more than we're doing at the moment. We tend to be looking after the big business and picking on the small business. At the moment, they're getting taxed and taxed and taxed, and eventually they won't be able to put up with it. So protecting small business is part of what I'm going to do if I get into Parliament. Also protecting prime farmland. We've heard about renewables, and for goodness sake, you know, like everyone, no one, every conversation I have, no one wants to buy meat from China. But if we keep damaging our farmlands, our farmers, making it unprofitable for them, giving them less rights, we talk about rights. Farmers do not have a right to object to these factories going next to them. They have no right to object. They can go to the Supreme Court if they've got a heap of money, but they can't go to VCAT anymore. So they've lost those rights. They can't get insurance, right? They could lose a third generation farm because they've got a $750 million factory. It isn't a solar farm, it's a solar factory next door. They're cutting hay, goes next door, they can lose their farm. Insurances will insure them for burning down a hay shed, but not a solar factory, right? So they've lost their rights. We talk about rights in our community. They've lost their rights in a lot of these cases. And it seems to be a city problem being solved in regional areas again, and it's got to stop. Housing, getting back to reality. Housing's so hard for young people. We've just had, our daughters just bought a house. They've been living back home with us. We were empty nesters. They came back, they moved back home to save money. Cost us a fortune, but it was absolutely fantastic. They saved money. They did the right thing. They had to work hard. But she's sitting there. Sorry, Georgia. But we appreciate we had the opportunity to do it. They appreciate they had the opportunity to come home and do that. Time's up. Sorry, a lot more to get through. A couple things. The one thing I want to do, apologies, Christian beliefs, Christian values is what our community is built on today. The success of our community has been built on Christian values. And hopefully we get to talk more about that later on. Thank you.
Thank you, James, and thank you to our candidates. So we're going to move on now to our set questions, but before I do, just a reminder, you can scan the QR code and get your questions through. We've already got a heap coming through, so that's awesome. So for the set questions, so these, we're actually going to play a video on the screen, and at the end of the video, we will ask the question to each of the candidates, and each candidate will have 3 minutes to answer. Again, the timer will be set on the back screen, so you guys can sort of see the countdown, and we'll give you a reminder, friendly reminder if you need to. So if we could get that first video up on the screen.
Religious freedom isn't just about what we believe in the privacy of our own homes. It's about the right to express those beliefs, to speak openly, to practice freely, and even to hold and express views that are unpopular. It also means not being forced to say or do things that are against our faith. And this isn't just a nice idea, it's a human right protected under the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which states that every person has the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion, including the freedom to worship, practice, and even teach our beliefs, whether in public or in private, by ourselves or as a group. It also says that every parent has the right to teach what they believe to their children and have them educated in their faith. Australia is a signatory to this international covenant, and it is legislated as one of the 7 core international human rights treaties that Australia has adopted. Despite this, we have no national laws that protect religious freedom. Instead, we rely on a patchwork of laws that usually mention religion as an afterthought and often as an exemption rather than as a positive right. Right now, religious freedom is under great pressure. Beliefs that have been consistently taught for thousands of years are starting to be defined as harmful or bigoted, and laws are being enacted that restrict these teachings in the name of inclusiveness and protecting people from harm. For example, proposals for vilification legislation have been drafted with a new subjective test where the mere expression of a religious belief could be punished if a person from a protected group might consider it harmful. In Victoria, laws have been made that make certain prayers illegal, and a government commission has a website listing what prayers are acceptable and what ones are not. Those laws could see parents punished for simply encouraging their child to follow religious teachings on gender and sexuality. Companies have followed the example of our governments, and people have lost their jobs or been punished at work for expressing their beliefs or even simply because of what church they went to. Trying to silence religious beliefs does not create a more inclusive society. Instead, it creates one that excludes people of faith. Australia needs a government that understands the importance of religious freedom and protects the rights for all people to respectfully debate and disagree on these most fundamental issues. Will you protect the individual rights of religious freedom, expression, and conscience, and the right for parents to raise and educate their children in accordance with their faith?
Great, thank you. Michael, I might actually get you up to be the first one to answer. Yes. So the question is, will you protect the individual rights of religious freedom, expression and conscience, and the right for parents to raise and educate their children in accordance with their faith?
Okay, well, I think I could really say that the gentleman that was in the video there could have written our policy pretty well. That's everything he's talking about is why our party is here. It's as basic as that, as I talked about in my introduction. I guess a few specifics, like in this election, there's 3 policies we're focusing on, which is the rights of religious schools, the transgender issue, and also electricity prices. So obviously 2 out of 3 of those totally come under what that gentleman was just talking about. And yeah, that's why we're here, essentially. And it's not just a policy for me, it's quite personal to me. Like, we send our daughter to a specific religious school, and it was quite actually interesting. About the week after we decided to send her there, I was chatting to the principal one night, and I said to him, surely the bureaucrats will leave our little school alone in the middle of nowhere, we don't need to worry. Then the very next morning on the radio, I heard a report that the Law Reform Commission in Canberra had brought out a report recommending that schools like I had just decided to send my daughter to didn't need to employ religious staff for different subject areas. I thought they only need to employ them for specifically religious subjects. They should be forced potentially to employ non-religious people for all the other subjects. This is in a school where they say prayers at the start of lessons. So obviously I was not pleased to hear that news, and also was a bit of a wake-up call that no, this little school in the middle of nowhere is not safe. And so that was certainly one thing which has motivated me to be here tonight, as presenting myself as the candidate for Family First. So yeah, these issues are personal, and not just to me, I'm sure to many people in the room. And yeah, what that gentleman was talking about is exactly what we're here to stand for. Thank you.
Fantastic. Might ask Mark to come and answer the question.
Yes, freedom should definitely be free for association with who we want to associate with, and freedom for faith. I fully respect parents' rights to bring up your children the way you want. And so many parents have gone the homeschool path because the public system has been invaded by filth. And we know where it all comes from. The very ones that were calling us bigots when we were trying to protect marriage have become the bigots towards us. It seems as though division is what this is all about. They try and divide through religion. I don't like to really call Christianity a religion. I like to call it a faith, to be honest. And everyone has that right to be faithful to who they want, who they choose. Choose to live your life the way you want. That's a democracy, right? Choose to pray outside an abortion clinic. That should be your free right. We know what happened in Albury, right? It was disgusting. I believe the division of the no vote, the referendum, tried to stop us speaking our truth too. But we won against the Aboriginal corporation trying to push us to divide an apartheid kind of Australia. I've been fighting hard all during COVID against the arrogant Daniel Andrews government and what they did to us and the financial harm they did to people, businesses and families. And I don't want to see that happen again. So therefore we must be free to speak our truth, because as Christians, that we know that's what saved lives, right? So absolutely affirm everything on that video and fight my hardest, because I know what it's like to be subjugated now in my own country. And I know what it's like to feel like we don't belong here in my own country. It's time we turned it around. The colour of your pigment of your skin means nothing. We are equal, and we have a free right to say that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Tim?
Okay, so religious freedom is guaranteed in the Australian Constitution. It's a right that we all have. But sadly, our rights are not worth what they used to be, as we saw during COVID. The rights government can decide that the rights are inconvenient and they're not rights anymore. They suspend them. We've seen the right to freedom of religion whittled away to defend people's feelings, and it's wrong. The rights of the individual are paramount to the Libertarian Party. Freedom of association, freedom of speech, and freedom of religious faith. The right to express your own belief. You should be free to pray in front of an abortion clinic or anywhere else. Not free to block people going in, but free to pray. You should be free to express your faith, and so should everybody else. And what they believe in, they should also be allowed to say. The Libertarian Party will support a Bill of Rights, have a referendum to entrench a Bill of Rights in our Constitution that the government will not be allowed to override. On education, we also believe in freedom of education. The party policy is to fund the child, not the school, which means every child will be funded by the government instead of money going to schools and you picking the schools. The money follows the child wherever you take them. That includes faith schools, that includes homeschooling co-ops or just homeschooling. We also believe we should devolve the curriculum to the local level, not being run out of Melbourne or Canberra. That we will abolish the Federal Department of Education altogether. We don't need it. It doesn't run schools, it just makes rules. So we should devolve responsibility to the lowest possible level, the people who actually care about the children, the parents and the local teachers, and they should be the ones deciding what's taught. All right, that's enough.
Thank you, Tim. James?
Thank you. This might be a quick answer. I looked at the video and wrote down one word, yes. So we should. These rights should be protected. Probably to elaborate a bit, I don't know whether you're rubbing off on me, Tim, or not, but I think a good government's a small government. I think there's a lot of overreach in government telling us how we should live our lives and what we should be doing. And I think getting involved with religion is something a government should not do. So yes, those freedom of expression should be allowed. I think in regards to education, I've got a belief that we should probably be teaching maths and English and let the parents parent. It's amazing what kids are taught today and how they should think rather than how to think, and it really does need a change, and that is a part of that protection. And there was mention there of national laws to protect religious freedom. I think it's sad that we might have to bring in laws to protect religious freedom, but I'd certainly be happy to back up or fight for that religious freedom if I was elected into Parliament. I think that's absolutely essential. But once again, I think it's sad we've got to that spot. I think when it comes to education and religion, I think choice, you should be able to have a choice and you should be able to have that discussion. You should be able to talk about it. I think the restrictions that we put on, that society wants to put on us, restricting speech doesn't solve problems. Unless you can have an honest conversation with someone, you're not going to solve problems. And I think that's got to be part of it. So my answer to the question is yes. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Helen.
Well, thank you for that excellent questions. And my answer is yes too. And my guiding principle when I think about issues as important as this is that all Australians, in fact all human beings, should feel free to be who they are and to live the life that they wish to lead. Freedom of thought, of conscience, religion or belief is a human right, and it is protected under international law, as it should be. And we need laws in Australia to protect Australians from discrimination based on their faith or indeed non-faith. So we have many anti-discrimination laws, but we don't have a religious discrimination law, and we should do. We do have a patchwork of legislation, and I think we need to get this clarified. I'm very conscious that we've had laws discussed in this area, but no government has gone forward and actually legislated this. And should the next government decide that they wish to pursue religious discrimination laws, we need to have time to consider them. And my commitment to you, if I'm re-elected, is to ensure that the Parliament sees draft legislation in plenty of time so that I can come and consult with faith communities. I know that the Australian Law Reform Commission has put forward a report on the formulation of religious discrimination laws, and faith communities had some concerns about that. One of the things that was good in that report, I thought, was a recommendation around faith communities, faith organisations and schools, for example, to have the capacity to hire people who they wish to hire in their school. But we need to think about protections for everyone. And when we think about freedom of religion, we need to think about all religions, not just Christian faiths, because faith communities consist of people from many, many different perspectives and walks of life. And when we think about human rights, it's all human rights. Sometimes we can get locked into our own life experience, but we need to think about everyone. We absolutely do, and we should do so without vilification. People should feel safe to be who they are, to express the beliefs that they hold dear, and to practice their religion, or indeed not practice a religion if that's their choice. Legislation of this kind of importance should never be rushed through the Parliament, and I've experienced in the previous Parliament when that was attempted to be done, and it failed because people didn't feel like they had the time to debate this in a sincere and meaningful way. We need to be able to express a point of view, and Australians, I think, should feel safe in order to do that, provided they're not vilifying other people in the process, and I think we could all agree on that.
Thank you, Helen. All right, thank you, everyone. We'll move on to the second question that we've prepared, and we have got a lot of questions that are coming through that we will move to shortly after this one. We have another video. Steve, if you could play that, just for context. This is a similar frame in regards to religious freedoms, but this focuses on organisations, not individuals.
Freedom of religion doesn't just include individual religious belief and practice. It protects our ability to worship and live out our faith together as a group. This means religious communities must have the freedom to gather, worship, teach, and serve. This is part of freedom of association, the right to gather together with people who share the same beliefs as you. Part of this right is the ability to create institutions based on faith. Churches, mosques, synagogues, and temples, so people can gather and worship together. But faith isn't just about worship. We also need to build schools so we can educate our children in line with our faith, and charities so we can live out our faith by caring for others. Australia has a rich history of being blessed by faith-based institutions. Many of our largest charities, hospitals, shelters, aged care and aid, were founded as expressions of faith and still operate today because of their faith identity. Equally, the very first schools in Australia were founded by the church, and today 1 in 3 parents choose to send their child to a faith-based school, and that number is growing. These institutions serve all Australians, regardless of background, but they fundamentally remain religious organisations, built on faith, guided by faith, and successful because of our faith. But all this has been put under threat by governments and legislation that are trying to force religious organisations to compromise on their beliefs or prevent them from running their institutions according to their convictions. One of the most serious areas of pressure is employment and appointment of volunteers. At both state and federal level, laws have been introduced or proposed that would prevent faith-based organisations from preferencing employees who share and live out that organisation's faith. Our institutions are about our people. To be a faith-based school or charity, we need people who not only say they believe our faith, but who live it out in everything they do. Faith-based charities are not just service providers. They're mission-driven organisations that serve others because of their faith. Schools and colleges don't just teach curriculum, they help to shape and form students' characters in a set of values and beliefs. And Australians are increasingly choosing to send their children to schools who form their students based on faith. And school staff, executives, and teachers and support staff are the people who set that culture. Australia is greatly blessed by our faith-based institutions, educational, charities, and places of worship. But none of this can happen unless they can choose to employ people who uphold and live out their faith. So, will you protect the right of faith-based organisations, including charities and educational institutions, to operate according to their faith? This includes employing staff and engaging volunteers who believe and practice their faith.
Okay, so we're going to continue to rotate the order of who goes first. So, Mark, I'm going to ask you to take this question first, please, and I'll just repeat the question for you as you come up. Will you protect the right of faith-based organisations, including charities and educational institutions, to operate according to their faith? This includes employing staff and engaging volunteers who believe and practice their faith.
Could be short too, yes. Absolutely. Got that from him. But you know what? It is important to protect institutions, to choose who works there. We must be like-minded to give our children the best education we can. When we have a school ethos that says we want to be a Christian school standing up for the right to serve as Christ served, and it's so important that everyone is on side with that. Because some public schools are great, but it can sometimes take just one rat-bag teacher and the school's poisoned, utterly poisoned. And we should be able to sack people that don't align with our faith in faith institutions. Should be free to do so. Our freedom to choose has been very subjugated in recent times. And it's very important that no matter how hard it gets, no matter if society, heaven forbids, goes back through another pandemic, we should even have even greater rights during those periods, not lose rights to the government anymore. We've learned our lesson of being controlled by a government system which is too big, too expensive. So I believe, yes, we must support in every way for a freedom to employ those that align with the same like-mindedness as you'd expect in any Christian organisation. Thank you.
All right. So yes, also. Freedom of association is fundamental in our lives. We should be able to choose the people that we want to associate with. We should be able to choose to join a club or a society or a union or a church, and we should be able to choose to not associate with people we don't wish to. There is a right to discriminate. You should be able to choose people who share your views to participate in your institutions. Adults should be free to choose. The state should not be used to enforce views of morality, any views of morality. And we've seen it in the past where churches have used the state to enforce their views, and now we're seeing the opposite, where anti-Christian groups, anti-church, anti-religious groups are trying to enforce their views on everybody using the power of the state. The problem in the situation is the government. The government needs to have less power, full stop, which is why we need to restrain the government with a Bill of Rights. The government crowds out private charities, schools, by getting bigger, spending more money, and the government does it badly. Whereas a private charity will care about how the money's spent and the outcomes that happen, the government just cares about employing the public servants and spending the money. They don't care about the outcomes. And that's just the nature of government. That's true in everything the government does, which is why we think the government should do less. Libertarian Party MPs will never vote to reduce people's rights or to increase their taxes. I went to a religious school, my children are at a religious school, and I think it's important that we can send our children to places that share our views. Thanks.
Over to you, James.
It's going to be fairly consistent, yes. You know what, before I get on to the answer, it is nice being in a room where we're not talking about what's in it for me. You know, we come here and we're talking about charities, we're talking about hospitals, we're talking about schools. That's absolutely fantastic, and thank you. It's an honest intent that you've got to do the right thing by community, so thank you very much. So, you know, you talk about these things, a charity, and how does a charity work? And I think the character of that charity is based on the people that are in it, to do the right thing, to have the right intent. And I think, and if a religious organisation has built that charity on that honest intent, then they should have the right to have whoever they want in it, because otherwise that charity doesn't work. The school doesn't work. I went to a religious school. My kids, we had the choice. We were lucky enough to have the choice to send our kids to a faith-based school. And we did that because of the character of that school and the character of the people there. And if we don't have those choices, if those schools don't have the rights to maintain that character, then we lose our choice, because then we're all the same. Same as the charities, same as the hospitals. So I think this question is a yes. My answer is definitely yes. And it's about choice. Because if we start all being the same, because it's dictated by government or by whoever, then we lose those choices. So answer yes, and thank you very much. I appreciate it. Well done.
Thank you, James. Over to you, Helen. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a very similar question, and I think that it is extraordinarily important to recognise the work of faith-based organisations. I too was educated in a faith-based school. I did my nursing and midwifery education in faith-based hospitals. It's absolutely a critical thing that we have the right to gather in the name of a faith that we are practising. Of course we do. I'm concerned too that we make sure that in whatever we do in practising our faith or utilising our freedoms as human beings, that we don't in any way limit the freedoms of other people too, and that we acknowledge as people who care about human rights and care about each other that other people don't feel unsafe and excluded. And as I mentioned before, the Australian Law Reform Commission has undertaken some work, particularly around organisations, and their recommendation was that faith-based organisations should have that positive right to hire as they see fit in order to maintain the business that they're operating, whether that be a church or a school or any other organisation. But at the same time, that shield should also be careful that we don't have any swords as well. And we need to say it here. There are students in schools who are part of the LGBTI community. We need to make sure those students feel safe. There are people who enter residential aged care as part of the LGBTI community who need to feel safe. They're going to a residential aged care facility or a home of some sort, that they don't feel excluded or unsafe. I know that you are good people, and I don't for a minute think that you would in any way do that, but we need to make sure that in our laws that we're thinking about everyone. People of different faiths, people of the Muslim faith, people from an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander background and their belief systems. So, yes, I've heard my colleagues talk about not wanting government in your face. And nobody wants government in their face until they do want government in their face, actually. And we don't have laws that protect against religious discrimination. So that does require the government to get involved. And I say to you that if we are to bring in those laws, we need to scrutinise them very carefully and make sure they're the laws that will give us the freedoms that we want and protect people, all people. I think... Again, I would say that religious charities indeed have done enormously good work. But I also acknowledge the pain that many people have felt who have experienced harm in some places too. And my own life experience has included that in a faith-based school that I attended. So there may be people in the audience right now who have experienced that pain, and I would reach out to each and every one of you as people of faith to remember that there is hurt and there's been harm, and we need to make sure that in everything we do so from the basis of doing good. And I believe that's what you want. I think that's what we all want, and we need to take care in the laws that we create in order to engender that for our society.
Thanks, Helen. Michael, if you could round things out, thank you.
I think you've all probably guessed where I'm heading on the yes-no divide here, but I'll start with a simple example. Imagine you work at, say, the local burger takeaway shop, but as customers walk in, you say to them, look, the takeaway shop across the road, that's actually better than this one. Go over there, you don't want to buy the stuff from here. How long do you think you're going to stay employed in that shop? Obviously, it would be very reasonable for the owner of the shop to tell you to stop doing that or you're out. And I'd say that's the same example as at a religious school. It's just necessary for a religious school to have as a last resort that sort of option. If someone's not living to the ethos of the school, they do have the right to say, no, you shouldn't be at this school. You should go to another school, go work at the burger shop across the road, sort of thing. And of course, that actually does affect the rights of that person who is excluded in that situation. But I think it's a fairly minor effect on their rights because they have a whole other society to go and get involved. They're not left on the scrap heap of unemployment. They can go and work at the other school. So the rights of that school to practice its freedom of association, to me, take priority in that situation. And because you simply cannot maintain the character of something if everyone there is not on board with what it's about, whether it's the takeaway shop, whether it's a political party. Like, you're not going to see the Labor Party letting Liberal staffers, say, run as its candidates. Like, that's just not going to happen. So every organisation excludes people based on who it includes. So that's just a fact of our society, how it works, and as long as there's a place for everyone to be involved, that's fine. And so, so basically that's where our party is on those rights of religious institutions to practice what they want to do with the people they want to do it with. Thank you.
Thank you. We're just going to go to a quick 5-minute break, just to give you guys an opportunity to do what you need to do, and we'll be back at 8:17. And this is going to be the part of the night where we ask your questions from the floor. And just a reminder again to keep asking if you haven't already. If I could get everyone's attention, please. We might get the questions going. We've got a few to get through. If you could take your seats. Yeah, so lots of awesome questions coming through. Not surprised, we've got a couple on cost of living. So the first question, how will you address increased costs of living to ensure that average Australian families are able to afford to buy homes, able to pay for petrol and groceries? And I might get Tim to answer this one first, please.
And just noting, we've got a 2-minute timer for these questions.
All right. So we say we don't have a cost of living crisis, we have a cost of government crisis. We have the red socialists, we have the green socialists, we have the blue socialists, we have the orange socialists. They all want more spending, more taxes, and more money from the magic money tree. The Libertarian Party will cut taxes. We're proposing a 20% flat tax on personal incomes over $50,000, so tax-free threshold up to $50,000, or a tax-free threshold to $100,000 for a family. So husband and wife or partners can combine their incomes to $100,000 tax-free and then 20% on top of that. We also have proposing a flat tax of 20% on business income, but only when it's taken out of a business. So when it's distributed, it's not taxed when the company makes a profit, it's taxed when the profits are distributed to the owners, which is a fundamental reform of the tax system. It will allow businesses to self-finance rather than borrow. It'll change the whole way our economy works. We will end the net zero things. We're saying no subsidies, no bans. So we'll legalise all forms of power, and we won't subsidise any of them, and we'll let the market come up with the best solution there. We need to cut the size of the public service. The government is now over 50% of the economy, and not just the public service, but also NGOs are government funded and NDIS government funded. It's got to change. It's crowding out our whole society. We have to make a difference. We need sound money, so stop printing money and stop using inflation to push up taxes. We need to reform the housing system to build more houses. That's the solution to housing, is building more houses. We have to change regulation, cut regulations, let people build more houses rather than have restrictions that are stopping houses being built and forcing them up. And abolish excise on petrol forever, not just a half cut, get rid of.
Thank you, Tim. And just a reminder to keep it respectful. James, if you could come up, please. Did you want me to read the question again?
No, cost
All
of
good.
living.
Cost of living, yep. And just, I forgot to mention it before, we've gone to a 2-minute timer now.
That's okay. I don't know why you said keep it respectful when I was coming up, but anyway. So cost of living. I actually made notes on this one, the same one I made notes on. So obviously we aren't going to cut fuel excise completely, but the 25 cents we are cutting is very important for regional areas. It is so helpful for people that are struggling, and it's a real difference straight away, and that's the important thing, because people talk about how we're going to bring electricity bills down and other bills down. That will help cost of living straight away, which is really important. And I'm not just saying that because we own a freight company, but it will help. But I mean, with that, with small business, if the costs come down to small business, we deliver to supermarkets. So if our costs come down, that means the cost of delivering that food, and therefore that food is cheaper. So it has that ongoing effect, which is very important. The $1,200 tax relief straight away, that's also something that's going to help communities and people straight away, which is extremely important. Energy. There's an obsession on getting to 80% renewable. We're heading that direction at the moment. How's your power bills? Up, down, up. So bringing more gas, having a bit more of a sensible conversation around energy, and not just having a renewable only conversation, actually having and I know if I mention nuclear, people are going to say it's 600 million or 105 million or billion, sorry, 105 billion. But it is part of the conversation, the same as gas. Increasing our capacity to put gas into the system will reduce the price. And the long term, that's a medium result. Long term's the nuclear. Housing, a real housing policy. We've brought out a real housing policy, been out for quite some time now, spoken to a lot of developers and councils about this. It's a $5 billion plan where we're going to pay for infrastructure. You look at Kiwa, for instance, it's local, 300 odd houses that can go now if we can get the infrastructure there. We're willing to pay for that. Supply and demand, so we increase the supply, the price is going to come down. So 300 extra houses we could do pretty well straight away. Really? 2 minutes is up. If you want to talk to me for the rest of this, happy to afterwards. Thank you.
Great. The next question will actually be on cost of living as well, so you'll have an opportunity to expand. Helen?
Firstly, I want to acknowledge that people are feeling extreme cost of living stress, and that has real implications on decisions about what they will do with their family budget, how much food they'll put on the table, whether they'll go on a family trip or a holiday, can they pay the rent, can they pay their mortgage. This is real, it's not a joke. We need to do more about supermarket prices. I have put forward a policy where we would have a supermarket ombudsman who could be a tough cop on the beat to call in the duopoly of our supermarkets who rip off both consumers and farmers. I believe we do need to have divestiture powers in the ACCC. There is no repercussions for the big two when they rip us off at the supermarket. Secondly, I would say it's fun and easy to say we should not be paying as much tax. How are we going to pay for our roads, our hospitals, our education? All of our schools are supported by our tax, all of our healthcare is. So I think it's not a question of talking about income tax as much as saying we need to broaden our tax base. James just mentioned gas. Gas companies are ripping each and every Australian off on a daily basis. They're exporting gas all over the world at prices that would make your eyes water. We are paying way more for gas domestically than many people across the world are for our gas, and they're not paying the taxes that they owe to us. Teachers and nurses pay more tax than some of our big exporting gas companies, and that's something you should be upset about. Finally, I would say I'm pleased to hear the Liberal Party have picked up on the policy that I put to the Parliament to Private Members Bill on enabling infrastructure for housing, particularly in rural and regional Australia. Unfortunately, they voted against it, or they didn't vote in favour of me having that debate or putting through that policy. I sent my legislation to the Housing Minister of both the Labor Party and the Liberal Party. They both have similar policies now, and here in Wodonga we have received funding from that fund that is about water connections, sewerage connections, the power, the pipes, the poles, the pavement that enables us to get houses out of the ground and increase supply.
Thank you. Michael.
So obviously this cost of living issue is a huge one, and we've just heard some sort of grand tours of government spending and all the things we can do about it from the other candidates. But in the space of 2 minutes, I'm going to focus on one particular aspect of it, which, as I mentioned before, we had those three main things to our campaign, Family First this time, and one of them was electricity prices. I'm even going to focus on one particular aspect of that, and one aspect which I haven't, in fact, heard anyone else talking about in my party or anywhere else. And that is that, putting aside for a moment what our power sources are and how we're going to change those and all that sort of issues, let's just have a look at what we're actually being charged for our electricity. And what's changed a lot in my lifetime, easily within my lifetime, is there was a time where we all got charged the same. It was a reasonable price, and you could also expect it to rise reasonably on an annual basis. So electricity was just there in the background. It wasn't dirt cheap. I don't remember my parents telling me to waste the electricity, but it wasn't a big issue like it is today. And so what happened is all these state governments thought, we can make a quid, we can privatise all our electricity retailing. Well, surprise, surprise, all those companies are in there to make a big profit. And so what we have today is this very interesting system where if you're savvy and you're interested, as me and my wife are, you can get quite a good price on electricity. Like, by world standards, we pay about 21 cents a kilowatt hour, which is actually less than the average price in the United States. Like, I've done a bit of research on this. But a lot of people are paying in the 40s or possibly 50 cents for their peak electricity. So I think it's time to ask, is this fair? Is this good? Like, is it okay to say that that's the free market, and if you don't look into a better price, tough luck? I kind of feel, no, that's not good enough, especially as a Christian, when there's an elderly person who's vulnerable, who's paying 40 cents or more per kilowatt hour for their electricity. Is it okay to say, well, because you don't really understand your bill, you don't really understand what a kilowatt hour is, you can just get ripped off and that's okay? I don't think that is okay. So I think we're probably, the horse is bolted on the privatisation. We're not going to be able to get rid of it completely, but we do need to introduce some more regulation, which says, say, for instance, anyone who's been charged over 30 cents automatically goes to a government retailer or something like that, is what needs to happen. We just can't leave people out there who, for whatever reason, they don't understand their bill, they're just too busy to get around to worrying about it. They've got lots of, and it's not just for the individual. This is a major effect on inflation, electricity costing more than it needs to. So we've got to do something about that.
Thank you, Mark.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are at taxation saturation point. No economy has ever taxed itself into prosperity, and it never will happen. So before we become a third world country, we need to do this, I believe. We need to support the gas and coal industry for good base load. We need to stop the renewable rip-off, which destroys the grid and has become a national security issue. Whenever the sun shines, the poor guys at the coal plants that are really giving you power at night, day and night, 24/7, are going nuts because they've got to balance a system that's going out of control because of this rip-off. Not glass for farms, we need grass, right? Not nuclear, other things. We're surrounded by water. There's wave power generation technology in Europe, in the Middle East. We don't even look at it. We've got Bass Strait, which is a funnel-way channel. Could be turning turbines and you wouldn't even see them, like these disgusting big high swindle factories they're putting up everywhere. And not uranium, but thorium. Has anyone looked at this? They've invented cars that run on thorium. The difference with the uranium and thorium is that thorium is much more stable and it doesn't get out of control temperature-wise. It actually, you get less power out of it if you over-temper the stuff. It's a lot safer. We don't want nuclear power plants in Newcastle when we're having 4.6 Richter scale earthquakes, do we? So I want to reduce income tax by half. This money they're wasting on overseas wars and on this pipe dream that Pacific Islands are going under because of rising sea levels has got to stop. I believe we need to stop this grifting off our country, going to stupid wars, sending our military equipment away to the Ukraine when we can't hardly even stand our own 2 feet. I'm a military man. I was in the Army, Australian Army, as an Army apprentice for 9 years, and we need to build the defence because this is a social national security issue.
Thank you, Mark. All right, we were going to ask a question specifically on renewables, but it sounded like everyone sort of moved on to onto the energy question there. So we're going to go back to a bit more specifically on that first question, which was housing affordability. So specifically, what is it that you would, if elected, would push for to help with housing affordability? And we are up to James to start us off, I think. Thank you, James.
I sort of went through this to a certain extent. Obviously, we've got some first home buyers opportunities that we've done, but I think if I can finish off what I was talking about in regards to the $5 billion plan, and I get that Helen put it together and you said that you put it into Parliament, but the difference is we're going to fund it. That's the part of being a party. We fund it, we've costed it and funded it. So that's the most important part. So we've got that $5 billion put aside for that. And there is a 30% opportunity for regional areas. And this is the most important thing, that we get our fair share. And not only was there getting power to these areas, getting water to these areas, getting sewage to these areas, but it's also a freeze on regulations, which is very important. So then the regulations can't change when a developer starts. That's where the extra cost comes in, right? So it's just set and forget, and we've got to get it done. And not only that, there's a limitation on the time period. So 12 months, if they don't get it done, they don't get it started, then the money's taken away, so the incentive's there. And the supply and demand thing on the houses, as well as trying to deregulate part of it, is the most important thing. If you put 300 house blocks in Kiwa up, another couple of hundred in Wodonga up, then the prices will come down, and that's very important. And the house affordability is the second biggest thing that I've come across so far. It doesn't matter what town you're in, whether it be Wodonga, Wangaratta or wherever, when you're knocking on people's doors, cost of living and housing. So it's one of the most vital parts of it. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Helen.
Yes, I feel like I have answered this, but there are many pieces to the housing puzzle, of course, and I've spoken about that enabling infrastructure. Here in rural and regional Australia, for generations we've said build it and they will come. Well, they are coming, and they have come. We've seen almost a 20% net migration out of major cities into rural and regional Australia since COVID. That's terrific. We've been looking for people to come and fill the jobs that we have. We need doctors and teachers and nurses. We need allied health professionals and aged care workers and NDIS workers, but we need to have homes for them to live in. So this issue about housing affordability is an issue of the making of about 20 years of poor public policy. It didn't happen overnight, and it is deeply concerning to me as a parliamentarian and as a parent to know that young people have such a poorer chance of owning their own home compared to my generation and generations before them. So for me, it is about supply. We need to build more houses. We need to build them fast. We need to be smart about medium density housing and infill in our towns so that we don't end up with massive sprawl in country towns. There are real opportunities to do this. I've been championing projects that are medium density housing projects on old school sites like the Wangaratta Technical School, for example. I think there are a lot of opportunities, but we can't think we're going to fix it overnight. Sure, we can try to make the regulations easier for people to navigate, absolutely agree with that. But also we have to recognise in our country towns and our small rural shires, we simply don't have the planners and the engineers to get those planning permits through as fast as we can. One of the aspects of my Enabling Infrastructure Fund was about providing support to local councils for that planning and engineering to get the planning permits done much, much faster. I think we also need to think about modular housing. Post-war, we did a lot of really good work in modular housing. There's some great projects around Australia that we could emulate and do more of. There's no one simple solution to this, and I really think we need to work together to build the homes that we need for Australians, workers and young people.
Michael.
I could echo Helen's words there. There is no one simple solution, but I'll just give you a few personal observations of my own in this 2 minutes. I myself am an owner-builder, so I'm sort of almost finished building my stone cottage. It's not what I would recommend to everyone to do, but I think it is important that we have some unique, beautiful houses out there. And sort of, and part of my experience obviously there is to experience what it's like having to meet all the regulations. So I've certainly seen regulations which I think I would not make owner builders or even regular builders have to subscribe to get new houses built faster. You know, things could be added in later, like, for instance, all the insulation regulations. Like, sure, it's great for a house to be insulated properly, but what's more important is it important to get someone actually into a home, and they'll work out for themselves to put some insulation in later. Like, so we don't need necessarily Big Brother telling us exactly how to build our houses as much as they do now. But I think there's some other aspects to it is, you know, I'm passionate about urban planning. Last thing I want to see is some of our beautiful towns get badly damaged by inappropriate housing developments. So we obviously have to think about where we're putting our new houses. And that could come down to, it could be infill, it could be some extra urban development, but built more sensibly, like for instance, shops and services like say the ambulance station or whatever being built at the start and there. When we have a definite habit in this country of just keeping on building out around cities or big towns, and the services just stay in the middle of town, and tough luck to the people out on the edges, sort of thing. And I would even throw out there as a concept, I'm not saying I necessarily support this, but something to think about. Do we keep adding more people, basically building another small city every couple of years on the edge of Sydney, the edge of Melbourne, or the edge of Brisbane? Or do we think about building another small city somewhere, which could be in Northern Victoria, say? And I know a lot of you will go, oh my goodness, we live in the country and we don't want more people. But if you designed that well, if it was sort of a medium density city, you could have a city of say 200,000 people, and it'd only be a few kilometres by a few kilometres. And we've got the space for that. And so it's something to consider, like, could we do something like that instead of just keeping on adding on to everywhere else until it gets so big that those places become unpleasant? So I'm just putting that out as an idea.
Thanks, Michael. Tim? Oh. Mark, sorry.
As a builder, I can tell you it comes down to two things for the reason why building is not affordable anymore for the young generation. It's taxation and it's a lack of technical trade schools. Recent reported that 44% of a new project built home, the total cost is given to the government. Do you realise that? The government is grifting off this generation's ability to actually have a house of their own. Maybe we need to go back to government housing where they can rent, buy them again like they did in the 70s, possibly. And we need not overseas construction workers, we need Aussie youth getting into trade schools. I went through a military trade school called the Army Apprentice School, which was at Bonagilla, and it was the best thing that happened in my life. We need to rebuild that way our building industry. You're in there for 9 years and you get out and you start a building business, as I did. But you know what is very telling? Bonagilla was shut down in 1995, not long after I left as a second-year apprentice in the Army. And you know what it was turned into? An immigration hub, an immigration centre. They should not have done that. And they brought in adult traineeships to just let it melt away through the military. So it's very important we get these institutions rebuilt, and I want to see another trade apprentice army school built in Indi to fill the gap, because I'm sick of young ones not having any hope and having to leave because they have no opportunities. So yeah, it's not affordable, it's true, but we need workforce to build these things and not just throw money at it like Albo does. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Tim, if you could close this one out.
All right, so there's one simple solution to the housing problem, and that is build, baby, build. Okay. It's not really simple, but that's what it boils down to. We've got an artificially restricted supply of land. We've deliberately restricted the land that's available. We've regulated what can be built on it. We've cut down so instead of building houses and units, we're now just building houses on tiny little blocks. What's been done, the regulations that are in place are to benefit the developers, to get the most money from the block, and also to benefit the government, which rips a huge amount of money out of building. We've directed all the people into universities to work in the public service instead of into trades to build houses. So we have massive shortage of skilled workers. We have to fix that. We need to do more fast building. We need to do temporary building. We need to do prefab building, throw up quick things. It doesn't have to build a house for 100 years. We need to get houses up until people have got a house and they can add to it, extend it, work on it later. We just need to get people into houses. There needs to be a right to build. If you own land, you should be able to build on it without council stopping you. We also need to cut back on our migration rate. Not forever, but now, while there's a housing strain, we need to cut back immigration to ease the strain.
Thanks, Tim. And just a reminder, if you could please keep your comments in Slido respectful, that would be great. Thank you.
Great. So we'll move on to the next question, which is on immigration. Do you support changes to immigration, specifically the number of immigrants coming into our country and who is coming into our country, so we don't see crime and safety issues like in the United Kingdom? And I believe, Helen, we're up to you first. Thank you.
Well, thank you for this question. I think immigration is a really important conversation that Australia needs to have. Fundamentally, we don't have a population plan. So we've had no planning done by any modern government in regard to what are the numbers of people that we need in Australia in order to undertake the work that we have, in order to ensure that we have a skills mix across Australia. I've heard one of my colleagues on stage talking about construction workers, for example. We simply are not training construction workers fast enough. I'm a supporter of fee-free TAFE. I'm a regular visitor out to Bandiana. I acknowledge that there used to be an apprentice training school there. There's now a health training school there, so we're training medics and nurses, which is great. But we have a bit of a mess when it comes to migration. We had a backlog of people who had visas processed and accepted when our borders came down during COVID, and then when our borders opened. In fact, we had both major parties saying, quickly, bring more people in, bring more students in, bring the backpackers back. We need to have workers in Australia. We are an immigrant country. I can see across this room people from all parts of the world. So I think we need to have a compassionate asylum seeker and refugee policy, and I think we need to have the conversation as a nation as what is our population plan? Where do we need people? We don't need more and more people in our capital cities. We do need more skilled workers in our regional centres, but of course we need to have the houses and the infrastructure, the hospitals, the schools for people to come and utilise. And I guess just on that last point about crime, crime is not specific to any particular race of person. Crime can happen across all populations and all sorts of people. We need to make sure that we have adequately resourced and funded police. We need to make sure that our laws are strong, and we need to make sure that we have the networks and social supports when people come to our country, that they feel included, that they can get meaningful work, and that they don't enter a life of crime. But please, I think, don't associate crime with immigrants, because it's not always the case. In fact, far from it.
So I was thinking the other day, just thinking about sort of the foundational things of Australia, particularly in the 20th century. And as I do, I'm a bit of a historian. And I sort of thought, I came up with two words that sort of described Australia in the sort of the first 60, 70 years of the 20th century. The two words were sacrifice and generosity. The sacrifice of the world wars, how we gave 100,000 lives to defend liberal democratic principles. And I think that's something that this country should always be amazingly proud of. But also generosity for our post-war immigration program, where we took in people from all over, people who had been victims of those wars. And in particular, one group of people, the Jewish people. And this was a country where they could come and be safe, possibly because we're a laid-back sort of people and we don't care who you are. If that's the reason, that's a good reason. But, and it's amazing that such an ancient group of people were able to come to our new country, and this was going to be a safe place. And so, generally I've supported that immigration coming here. And you do get some problems with crime when new groups arrive. Like I remember about 30 years ago in Sydney where I was living, Vietnamese gangs was all the story. But now we don't hear about that. Like, we don't hear about anything bad about the Vietnamese community. They've integrated into Australia and they're great contributors. So I think you are going to get those problems on occasion. But yes, at the moment we are having too much immigration. Like, just because we have that wonderful, generous story, that's not really the reason we're doing a lot of immigration at the moment. One, governments just use it as a bit of a mask because, in fact, the economy is going backwards. But if you bring in more people, you can say GDP has gotten bigger, when in fact, per head, it's gotten smaller. But I think we also need to be very careful about the vetting, because I think it has been a multicultural fail that we now have people in this country who hate Jews. Like, I've been brought to tears over that. I've known a lot of Jewish people in Sydney. And yeah, I just think we need to think carefully about who we're bringing and examine them really closely. It doesn't mean necessarily excluding one particular faith. It just means looking at all the nuance of this. Like, I know one of the questions earlier was...
time. Wrap it up.
Yep.
Thank you. Mark.
Yeah, I'm going to be straight up. We need to pause immigration for 2 years because it's absolutely out of control. The Albanese's brought in 1 million of them, which is far above what we can sustain. We have Australians living by the rivers and in the city streets under the fronts of shops and being moved on by police and even fined as a result of this mismanagement of our population. It doesn't prosper us if we're not ready for it and if we're not prepared for it. You've got to prepare it. You've got to have housing, infrastructure. They haven't done any of that whatsoever. So pause it for 2 years while we get back on our feet and supercharge the building industry. We know the Labor agenda, to get more immigrants in, get more votes. They spoil them, you know. Many new immigrants have access to $75,000 grants to open businesses. Did you know that? They get given 75 grand to open a business, and if it goes broke in 2 years, they can grab another one. It's just absolute waste. We give them too much tax. That's the whole reason. We give them too much, and they're not held accountable for it. So yeah, the crime is because of the current Albanese government, and it is a major amount of immigration crime. There's no doubt about it. We look at Melbourne, we look at the infighting within their own culture, and we look at the people that are also harming Aussies, and it has to end.
All right. Our society is straining at the seams, and migration is one of the causes. Now, I am pro-migration. The Libertarian Party is pro-migration. I'm pro-migration. My wife is an immigrant, so don't think that I'm anti-immigrant. However, we need to ease the rates of migration to address housing and the strains on culture. People are not widgets. They're not interchangeable. Culture matters. So when you bring in people, they need to be compatible, or else you need to assimilate them into the society to make them compatible, to have a high trust society requires assimilation and shared values, and we are losing that, so that needs to be fixed. We should take more persecuted minorities from the Middle East and from North Africa, which is obviously we're talking about Christian groups who are being driven out. Women from the Middle East rather than men. The party has a policy on immigration of tariffs rather than quotas. People should pay immigration fee to come here. Because citizenship is like a club. Being a citizen of a country is like being part of a club. We have built something here. There are a lot of stored value, and there should be a fee to come in, and that will slow down migration and make sure that migrants are high value.
I think a lot of the answer is making sure we control migration to what we need, what we want. This is a great country. We've built a fantastic country. No wonder why everyone wants to come here. But we don't necessarily need belly dancers that are coming in at the moment, yoga teachers. If we need builders, we bring in builders, and that's what we need. If we need nuclear scientists, say, then we bring those in. But at the moment, it's bringing people in for the sake of boosting an economy. obviously the more immigration that we get, it helps the bottom line in the economy. That's got to stop. We've got to have a purpose for everyone that comes here. I know the Coalition has already committed to reducing migration based on obviously the housing shortage, and basically we are at capacity at the moment. Our economy's at capacity. So I certainly agree with that, but I think moving forwards, people that assimilate into the country, we don't look at people because of their religion, we don't look at people because of the colour of their skin. It's how they behave and how they integrate with all of us. And we've done it very well in the past. The Greek communities that have come across and worked hard in our communities, the Italian communities that have come, yes. There's been many communities that have come across and worked really well in our country. So I think we have to put safety up there, but we also have to have immigration for a purpose. So immigration for people that we need to come to this country. Thank you.
Thank you, James. We are going to take one last question. It's going to be a quick fire one, maybe a 30-second answer. And question is, can you tell us who you will preference first after yourself and why? And specifically, who you will preference, not who you will de-preference. So, Michael, can I... if someone votes, in this electorate.
First of all, the premise of the question is who we're preferencing actually doesn't matter because you decide your own preferences. I think that's a really common misconception in our political system. So when you go in to vote there, you just put the order you want. Like on the how to vote cards, that's a suggestion from our parties. Me personally, I think there's a good opportunity to say that if I wasn't running for Parliament, I'm actually pretty impressed by the choice we've got. Like there's people here with some really innovative ideas, they're obviously passionate about them. So I would not find it too hard to find someone else I wanted to vote for. But so in terms of preferences, Bart, generally my personal opinion would be to vote for the other smaller conservative parties. So like people like One Nation, like the Liberal Democrats, and also conservative independents like Mark. Then I would probably go with Liberal next, for a few, and then the rest after that.
Thank you, Michael. That's great. So I'll try and be a little bit more specific. So if let's make it, if you were not running, who would you vote for and why? Mark, over to you.
Yeah, straight up, I'd vote for One Nation, to be honest, because they're the only ones that aren't part of the Uni Party, Labor Libs, that seem to be the same. I'm very disappointed in Liberals with Dutton. I think they're Labor light, to be honest. Then I would certainly put Family First next. And am I answering this correctly?
Just the first one. That's all.
That's it, is it?
So
okay.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
That's great. Cheers. Thank you.
All right. I would vote for minor parties first before I got to any of the major parties or the Teal Party.
Thank you, Tim. Over to you, James.
I do base a lot of my voting on the personalities and, whether they're a genuine person, honest person. So probably nothing personal, but Athol from One Nation.
Thank you. And Helen.
Well, I'd like to address the first question, which is preferencing, because that is a thing in Australian democracy, and there are preference deals done by parties and minor parties right across this nation. You should ask yourself, why does a party preference particular people, and ask yourself about the character of those people. I'm an independent. I don't do any preference deals. I leave it up to you. I run an open ticket. You can see that for yourselves when you go to the ballot box. When it comes to who I would vote for me it is always a test of values and character and policies for a nation that's thriving and prosperous and equal and fair, compassionate and kind. That's what I look for.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. That actually brings us to the end of the forum. And as we outlined at the beginning, this evening, this forum was an opportunity for open and respectful dialogue, an opportunity for us to better understand our candidates and for our candidates in turn to understand our concerns as a Christian community. So I'd like to thank you all for joining us. Thank you to our candidates for joining us and contributing to this outcome. And as we bring the evening to an end, I would like to exercise my religious freedoms by closing in prayer. So if you'd bow your head. God, I thank you for the opportunity we've had this evening to engage in thoughtful discussion on some really important issues we face in our society. Thank you for our great country that we live in and the freedom that we have to engage in discussions such as this. I pray for your wisdom for our candidates as they look to lead us in this electorate in the upcoming term, and I pray for your blessing on everyone here as they leave this evening. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you.